co-founder of Saving Wild Sumatra. She has been a wildlife investigator since 2009, focusing on Southeast Asia's black market wildlife trade. In 2016, she and Tod, co-founder of Darwin Animal Doctors, traveled to Sumatra, Indonesia to document the impacts of the palm oil industry. This led to the birth of Saving Wild Sumatra, a conservation project helping the locals of Sumatra save their villages, rainforest, and animals from the palm oil industry and illegal exotic pet trade. Joining her is Tod Emko, a conservationist from New York City. After having crewed the Sea Shepherd Global for several years, Emko co-founded Darwin Animal Doctors, a veterinary and humane education organization that helps developing communities around the world. In 2014, he created the humane education comic A Piggy's Tale, inspired by his three-legged rescue dog, Piggy. Tod and Julie brought this humane education program to Sumatra in 2016. And Tod believes the future can be saved by teaching compassion to children today.
So I was just telling my fellow panelists that I'm actually really excited to be on this panel with you because it seems like you've been doing something that we've only attempted to do. So I'm definitely going to be talking to you after this is over. So Saving Wild Sumatra started a year and a week ago, like any good project starts, with a phone call from a friend.
So my friend, Elizabeth, who is mortified right now, is actually in the audience right now and is a journalist for the Dodo. And she actually was a journalist throughout Africa and Indonesia for a while, and she adopted a sick little kitten while she was there. But she couldn't bring the sick cat in her state when she came back to the city, to the United States. So she asked if I would go back when the kitten was ready to bring it back. And I, being the sucker I was, said, okay. And then Elizabeth said, well, I can also give you all the contacts for all of the really important people that you would want to speak to and learn about when you go to Sumatra. So that's when Julie called me and told me I wasn't allowed to go to Sumatra by myself.
I mean, Tod, of course, needs my expertise and my skills. So we said, yes, we will rescue your kitten, and we will bring back footage of some of these impacts that are affecting Sumatra. All right, so due to the limited time, I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of these are the crises facing Sumatra. So this is Indonesia. Sumatra is this island right here, and that one. So this tiny archipelago supports 85% of the global demand for palm oil and palm oil products. And it was only within the last few years that we had the boom of palm oil being in all the packaged food that within just those few years, more than 50% of the rainforest has been leveled and converted into palm oil plantations. And 75% of the rainforest that remains has already been earmarked to other palm oil companies. So what we have, the situation, is these small, tiny protected areas in a sea of monoculture that cannot support biodiversity. So the issue that we're seeing is that wildlife that leaves the protection of the rainforest is killed by farmers. The wildlife that remains within the safety is vulnerable to being impacted by the black market wildlife trade.
So that brings us to our actual trip. Now we wanted to go there and see, is it really that bad? Well, that brings us to the very first hour after we landed in Sumatra.
So after we decided that we were going to have to go see these markets for ourselves, this is day one. This is an hour after we landed. So the next few images it's from our undercover footage of that first day that we were there. And there's really no way to describe the smells, the sounds, just the fear and the energy of these markets. But so 90% of the 95% of the wildlife that's captured into the trade doesn't survive the transport or the horrors of the market itself. And this is something that the traders and the dealers know, so they know when those animals die, they need to bring in more wildlife to make up for that loss.
And so that leads us to a really bad extinction problem. So Sumatra is a really special place. That's the last refuge for a lot of really, really special unique animals. But the tigers there are now numbering in the tens. And orangutans there, it's one of the only 2 islands in the world that supports orangutans, and they are expected to go extinct in 20 years if we don't do something.
So this, let's go back for a second. This image of the orangutan wandered out onto a slash and burn, and then it was beaten by farmers. And then the image of the tiger was snared in a protected rainforest, but it unfortunately did not survive.
Now, something people don't realize is that this has a huge impact, not just on them, but directly to people too. Now, it's killing people. Like, the palm plantations are literally killing people. How many does it kill? Well, actually, and this is an art project to illustrate, but we actually have, not just in Sumatra, but throughout Southeast Asia, 100,000 people die a year just from the smoke pollution of the burning forest to make new palm plantations. That's how bad it's gotten. And you can imagine if that's how many people just die throughout the region from the smoke inhalation, what life is like for the people left in Sumatra surviving that. It's destroyed their economy and their water supply, and they have almost no options left.
So that brings us to, what are we doing? So our solutions to this crisis that we have so little time to do something about, we're going to break down into 3 different parts. There's a lot of different moving pieces, but we're going to break it down into the main 3. But first of all, if you're doing a campaign like this, you must be engaging with the community. You must be speaking to the people, because without their involvement, you are not going to have a successful campaign. Oh, is that my part, or is that your part? Oh, okay. So these are the 3 parts of Project Saving Wild Sumatra. So humane education, community events, and wildlife rescue and rehab training.
So this is Illusory Ecosystem's only hope, honestly. Like a lot of people say, these are huge, enormous problems. It's an emergency happening now. How is humane education going to help this problem? Well, actually, we actually have a slide that's not coming up.
I think that was one.
Okay. Well, we have a K through 12 program. Our humane education program is split into 3 parts, and it's all based on my 3-legged dog, who's the best dog in the world. And it's actually a program that we at Darwin Animal Doctors teach all around the world, and we've absolutely transformed a lot of communities through humane education. So it's a cartoon about a 3-legged dog and his struggles and learning to get along with humans and the other animals in the environment. His guardian angel is a pig. And in places like the Galapagos Islands and in Koh Tao, Thailand, kids are now revolutionizing the scene after going through this education program. In the Galapagos, kids are now forming their own humane education groups and going out and teaching adults why they should take care of the ecosystem and its animals. And now, in Sumatra, we actually did a pilot program last year using this program, and the teachers in the system loved it so much that they actually asked us to come back again. And thanks to a huge grant from LUSH Cosmetics, the Charity Pot program, we're now going to teach it for an entire year in all the schools in Sumatra so that the children there can all grow up avoiding the mistakes that we do.
And everybody here has pretty much met Piggy, right? The 3-legged dog?
More on him soon. So we also have a young adult program. So kids who are of college age or recently graduated from college are going to be looking for careers. Now the thing is, in the regular business schools and the regular syllabuses out there, there's nothing about how to make a sustainable business or sustainable careers. So we're working with college programs to give these schools in Medan, the capital city, and the alternative to create their own sustainable careers, work for sustainable companies, or just have the sustainable perspective when they're going out there to get work and create new jobs.
And also I just wanted to point out real quick, these students at some of the universities that we spoke at, it was amazing and heartening and inspiring that they get it. They understand the crisis that Sumatra is facing and are desperate to do something about it. So the future is hopeful.
Yeah. And there's a 3rd part of the humane education program, but we're going to get to that in a little bit because it's a surprise. Now, the next facet of the Saving Wild Sumatra program is, skipped again. Okay. Well, it's community development. And so this was the next slide, but the community development program is a big program that basically in communities like in Sumatra, in other developing places where it's very village-oriented, community events are how communities can reflect and reinforce what their societal values are and what they're going to work together towards. Now, in Sumatra, the palm plantations have done a lot of work and poured a lot of money into convincing the locals that their way to prosperity is by giving away their land or letting palm plantations use their land and then getting jobs at these big conglomerates. Now, people locally in Sumatra are working with us to create environmental festivals and create year-round festivals to reflect in their societies that their values are actually going to be save the forest, save all the animals in it, compassion and conservation, and that way it constantly reminds them this is the goal, taking care of that forest for their children, not giving it away for their children.
And so this change is actually starting to happen on a government level as well. So again, this is day one. This is after we left the markets. We got to meet the Minister of Sumatra. She's a new Minister of Sumatra and is a lot more progressive than her predecessor. And actually, a week ago, she announced that she wants to ban logging throughout Sumatra. So it's going to take a few years, but again, the future is very hopeful with her.
Now, the Ministry of Wildlife is responsible for taking care and saving all of the wildlife in Sumatra. All those animals that were in those wildlife cages, in the wildlife markets, all of the ones that are destroyed by palm oil, rescuing, rehabbing, and releasing them into the wild is their job, and they have no rehab facility. They have no rehab staff. They have no budget to do any of this. So, where does that fall to? That brings us to, oh, hey, who's that with the slow loris?
Okay, so again, this picture is of day one. So this was when we met the Minister of Wildlife. Someone had already bought a slow loris from that same market that we had been to, turned it over to her, she turned it over to us, and we ended up transporting it to a quarantine center several villages away. So this is one of those slow lorises that has been rescued from the trade. So, as you can imagine, the situation with wildlife being captured for the trade or coming into human conflict is daunting. Very little infrastructure exists to be able to take care of these animals that need rescuing.
So who do we turn to?
So our picture of Bobby didn't show up, but that's his hand.
And I also like to point out that he's good at feeding king cobras from a coffee mug.
So this is where Bobby, his hand, this is where Bobby comes into the picture. Bobby, apart from being a snake superhero, is a local who he's doing his best to address the crisis, but he's not a vet. He's had no formal training, but he's doing something that needs to be done. And if you want to talk more about that.
So Bobby's actually created a local organization called the Bukit Lawang Ecoproject. And this is a local group formed by locals with him at the head that employs all the locals there in that village in order to try to rescue, rehab, and re-release all the wildlife that wander into villages that they can convince poachers to give up from the wildlife markets and take from hunters instead of letting the hunters sell to the highest bidder. So they got their work cut out for them, but again, no actual infrastructure or training. So that's where we come in.
So I'll explain. Oh, well, I guess I should say, so because of Bobby's relationships with the community and these poachers, he's able to do what he does.
So we've talked to a lot of people who are helping the problem, but we wanted to actually see if we could speak to the people who are causing the problem instead of just helping the problem. So we wanted to see if we could talk to poachers themselves and find out their story. We didn't think that this was going to happen. To our surprise, all the poachers were willing to talk to us. We got a group of poachers who were willing to talk to us because nobody had ever talked to them before. Nobody actually wanted to find out their story, why they had to do poaching, what their goals were, if they actually wanted to do it. And we found out, no, they didn't. Now, this is the third part of that humane education program I was going to tell you about. The third part of the humane education program is the poachers. We have now an adult retraining program. We're taking poachers who no longer want to be poachers, who come to us asking us for some other economy to work for some other job that exists in this place that's not driven by palm plantations or the illegal wildlife trade. And then we're working with companies that we're vetting who are local in Sumatra to hire them to use their lifelong skills to save the environment rather than destroy it.
And so this change, so this change, this inspiration to get other poachers to stop doing what they're doing, that's not going to come from us. That's not going to come from anything we're doing. That's coming from poachers inspiring other poachers to change. And we're doing that.
And now, to exemplify what we're talking about, we're going to show you a quick trailer about the things that we've been talking about. We brought back a lot of footage, and we're putting it together in a longer video, but for right now, here is a quick trailer to show you some of those problems and the people that we've been talking about. Enjoy.
Find what's the best way.
Okay.
What's the best in art? Okay.
Me and other volunteers here teaching about conservation.
Hello, how are you?
I think I'm falling in love with elephant.
They have a very directly effect from this because they are surrounded by the palm oil plantations.
You obviously want to help. What can we all do to help you save Sumatra?
The first people to ever view our trailer. So this was the first ever public viewing of that trailer. So glad you got to see that. So again, just to drive the point home, if we aren't listening to the people who are the most affected, who are experiencing these crises, we will never know the real solutions.
Thank you.